I'm Justin Clarke-Salt. I'm a Managing Director at Aon in the Cyber Solutions Group. So my talk was called Let's Talk About Risk. And I think this is part of my personal journey, kind of joining a big risk management company like Aon, and kind of the awareness of what risk is and how different organizations look at risk, that I've come to talking with people who are professionals in slightly different disciplines, and kind of looking at effectively challenging our perceptions as pen testers around kind of how we look at this and how we can give our clients better value. So this is really kind of describing a lot of things that I've learned about risk and how people look at risk over the last kind of couple of years, engaging with folks elsewhere in the business. So for example, cyber risk folks who have actuarial backgrounds and looking at data, looking at loss events and things like that as well. Talking to our insurance folks who very much, they look at risk completely differently to me. They're assuming that things will happen, and then you want to kind of mitigate those things happening. So that's very different kind of look at risk. And I wanted to kind of bring in some of that kind of stuff because I think pen testers, we have a tendency to look at risk in a particular way, which is perhaps not shared by our clients. And I just wanted to make sure that kind of I brought some of that awareness of the stuff that I've certainly been exposed to, just to make people think, really. I think in the cyber industry, we have a tendency to throw the R word around and use risk with things where perhaps we're not actually talking the same terminology as other people. Because I think depending on what kind of organization you're talking about, depending on the people you're talking to, they think about risk quite differently. And quite often what we're giving them in a pen test report is not, it's a list of findings that we've had, which are effectively in a prioritized order. But we throw the word risk around without necessarily kind of looking what risk actually means to the client, how they measure risk, how they manage risk. So I think there's a missing dimension there around kind of how we translate that priority into feeding into an organization, how they manage risk, how they rate risk. And I think that's the bit that I was really just challenging people to have a think about how they can do that better. One of the problems that we have with pen test reports in some cases is that they're a little bit hard to digest and it's a little bit hard to understand. You effectively probably have lots of buckets of findings. I've got 100 high-risk findings, I've got 200 medium risk findings, and I've got like 9 million low risk findings. Like what does that even mean? So there's definitely kind of some missing context around kind of what should a client be concentrating on in their business, in their context, based on what they care about, which is I think is the bit that we need to make sure that we are tackling. It's not going to be possible in all cases. But I think especially where we have the opportunity to work with our client, to learn from our client, I think we can present these findings in a better context to them. One key takeaway out of my talk is that risk means something very different to different organizations, to different people. So we need to be very careful what we're talking about when we talk about risk.